Excalibur. When people think of legendary weapons, one name slices to the front: Excalibur. But here's the thing, it wasn't just a sword, it was a throne wrapped in steel. Some legends say young Arthur yanked it from a stone, proving he was worthy of kingship, like some medieval gym trial. Others say a mysterious lady of the lake rose from the waters, holding it out like she was running a divine pawnshop. Either way, if you carried Excalibur, you weren't just strong, you were chosen. The blade was blinding, unbreakable, feared, yet the real ace wasn't the sword itself. It was the scabbard. Whoever wore it couldn't be killed. Arthur's greatest power wasn't his swing, it was his accessories. Of course, fate loves irony. He lost the scabbard, and with it, his invincibility. When Arthur lay dying, Excalibur was hurled back to the lake, caught once more by the lady, as if it was too sacred to remain in mortal hands. Even today, the name still glimmers in games, comics, and films. Excalibur wasn't just forged steel, it was destiny, sharpened. Mjolnir. Now shift from Britain's misty hills to the frozen north. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, was thunder bottled into a weapon. Crafted by dwarves, it came out a little short thanks to Loki's meddling, but Thor didn't mind. With it, he could level mountains, smash giants, summon storms, and then watch as it whipped back to his hand like the deadliest boomerang ever invented. But Mjolnir wasn't just for crushing skulls. It blessed marriages, consecrated funerals, and protected newborns. Imagine your wedding officiant lifting a hammer and declaring, "By Thor's power you may kiss the bride." Equal parts sacred and terrifying. The catch? Only the worthy could lift it. Even gods struggled, but for Thor, it was as light as air. Mjolnir wasn't just a hammer. It was faith, storm, and raw cosmic power forged into one small-handled apocalypse. Kusanagi. From thunder to fire, Japan's grass-cutting sword, Kusanagi. Despite the humble name, this blade came out of a dragon. The storm god Susanoo slew an 8-headed beast, split open its tail, and found the sword gleaming inside. He gave it to his sister, the sun goddess Amaterasu, sealing it as a divine treasure. Later, a hero named Yamato Takeru found himself trapped in a burning field. Enemies thought they'd roasted him alive, until he whipped out Kusanagi, sliced down the grass, and then turned the fire back on them. That's not just survival, that's turning arson into a weapon. Since then, it's been known as the grass cutter, though honestly, dragon belly blade sounds way cooler. Today, it remains part of Japan's imperial regalia, hidden away, never shown to the public. A sword born from myth, cloaked in mystery, and still untouchable. And trust me, the most cursed blade? We haven't even gotten to it yet. Gungnir. If swords and hammers weren't enough, Odin, the All-Father himself, carried a spear that made kings and warriors tremble. Gungnir. Forged by dwarves, it wasn't just any weapon, it was perfection and balance. A spear that never missed its mark. Once Odin hurled it, destiny itself bent to its will. But here's the twist. Odin didn't just use Gungnir to kill, he used it to command. Before battles, he'd throw it over the enemy ranks, dedicating them to death in his name. Imagine standing on the field, watching a god toss his spear and realizing you're already marked for the grave. For Odin, Gungnir symbolized more than war. It was authority, fate, inevitability, a spear that said, "The All-Father decides who lives and who dies." Even today, its legend lives on in Norse stories, tattoos, and sagas. Because when a weapon becomes destiny itself, you don't forget its name, Shamshir-e Zomorrodnegār. Now let's step into Persian legend, where even demons feared a single blade, the Shamshir-e Zomorrodnegār, or the emerald-studded sword. This wasn't just decoration. The weapon gleamed with gems, but its true value was its curse-breaking power. It was said to be owned by Solomon, the wise king who commanded jinn. Later, Persian heroes wielded it against sorcerers and demons, slaying creatures that no mortal steel could harm. One legend tells of the warrior Esfandiar, nearly invincible himself, who carried the sword into battle. Against ordinary men, it was unstoppable. Against dark forces, it was divine justice forged in steel. The blade sparkled, yes, but its shine wasn't beauty, it was menace. An emerald fire meant to burn through darkness itself. If Excalibur was destiny and Mjolnir was faith, then Shamshir-e Zomorrodnegār was divine law, a weapon that even spirits had to obey. Zulfiqar. Few weapons carry as much spiritual weight as Zulfiqar, the sword of Ali, cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad. Unlike the polished jewels of myth, Zulfiqar was raw, unmistakable, a split-tipped blade shaped like lightning forked in steel. Ali wielded it in battles that defined early Islam, and each strike carved its way into legend. One famous line is tied to it: "There is no hero but Ali, no sword but Zulfiqar." For believers, the blade wasn't just metal. It was divine sanction, a symbol of courage, justice, and faith made tangible. Even centuries later, its image echoes on banners, art, and memory. A weapon turned relic, and a relic turned symbol of unshakable resolve. Zulfiqar didn't just cut through armor, it carved its way into history. And now, from a battlefield relic to a buried miracle, a blade that defied even time. The flaming sword of Eden. Some weapons don't belong to mortals at all. The flaming sword of Eden wasn't forged by men or dwarves or gods of thunder. It was placed in the hands of angels. After Adam and Eve were cast out of paradise, this weapon was stationed at the gates of Eden to ensure humanity could never return. Not a simple sword, but a blade wreathed in living fire, burning so fiercely that it could turn back even the boldest soul. Its legend doesn't come from battles won, but from the battles it prevented. Imagine standing at the edge of paradise, seeing the last glimpse of perfection, and knowing a single step closer meant being consumed by divine fire. That's not just a weapon. It's the line between heaven and exile, between innocence and a world of toil. The sword became a symbol of ultimate power, an eternal guardian, untouchable, unreachable. Unlike Excalibur or Masamune, it wasn't about who could wield it. The flaming sword of Eden was never meant to be lifted by man. It existed only to remind humanity of what we lost and what we could never reclaim. Masamune. And finally, Japan's greatest swordsmith, Masamune. He didn't just forge weapons, he forged philosophy in steel. His blades were famed not just for their sharpness, but their spirit. Where other smiths made weapons of destruction, Masamune created swords that embodied balance, purity, and harmony. One tale compares Masamune to another smith, Muramasa, known for bloodthirsty blades that craved violence. When both swords were tested in a stream, Muramasas cut down everything in their path: fish, leaves, anything unlucky enough to float by. Masamune's blade, however, sliced only what deserved to be cut, leaving the innocent untouched. That's why Masamune's name endures. His swords weren't cursed, they were revered. The steel was flawless, but the soul behind it was what set them apart. In the end, his weapons weren't feared for their hunger. They were respected for their restraint. The Sword of Goujian. China's Sword of Goujian is a miracle in metallurgy. Buried for over 2,000 years, it was discovered in a sealed tomb. When archaeologists pulled it out, the blade was spotless, untarnished, still sharp enough to shave hair. Time itself had bowed to its craftsmanship. The sword once belonged to King Goujian of Yue, a ruler who endured humiliation, rebuilt his power, and struck back with ruthless precision. The blade became his testament, a weapon not just of war but of patience, cunning, and survival. Even today, scientists marvel at how it resisted corrosion for millennia. To historians, it's an artifact. To storytellers, it's proof that some weapons are more than tools. They're time travelers, carrying echoes of kings long gone. These weapons weren't just forged in fire. They were forged from humanity's deepest fears and brightest hopes. Tools of war, yes, but also mirrors of the people who dreamed them into being. And maybe that's the real secret.